Hey tarot friends, it's Dustin from Modern Metaphysicae, and today I thought we could hang out and take a trip through the Old Style Tarot by Alexander Ray. This is a recent release by US Games, and since it's come out, it is a deck that I have found myself using time and time again. In fact, I just got done doing a handful of client readings with it, and I thought, you know what? It's high time we did a review of this deck because I really, really love it, and it has truly become a staple in my practice. It hasn't left my reading table in some time now, and I just really love reading with it. So yeah, let's dive into this beautiful, beautiful deck. Speaking of client readings, if you're interested in having a reading from me, you're more than welcome to book one following the link down in the description box down below. Down there you'll also find all sorts of other good stuff like social media links where you can reach out and connect with me, as well as a link to Scala Metaphysicae where you can join our channel membership program and get access to some pretty cool perks like custom emojis to use in chat and comments on the channel, as well as access to our community Discord server, monthly Taroscope readings, and a bunch of other really cool stuff. So be sure to check all that out when you get a chance. Also, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up because it really does help the community and the channel to grow, and I really appreciate it. So, the Old Style Tarot. As you can see, it comes in a nice kind of two-piece box, which US Games has been really kind of doing really well with. I do love the slight detail here of just the ever so angled sides of the box here, which make it easy to grab onto and pull, because you get that nice little like vacuum effect sometimes. Inside you do get a little guidebook and the cards in one of these paper trays. I will say these paper trays are much more sturdy than they used to be, but they're still not my favorite thing. I honestly would have preferred a smaller guidebook and then had this packaged in kind of a more uniform package than had this little tray, but it's not the worst. As far as the guidebook goes, there wasn't really anything profound in this guidebook. There is a nice little blurb about the creator in here, and this deck has been around for some time. It was an indie deck by the creator for quite a long time, and a lot of people really loved it. But I'm really glad to see that it's gone mass market now and it's available in English, because it was prior to that was only available in Russian. But yeah, the guidebook, nothing really profound. You basically have in each card, you have an upright reading, and then you have a sort of like advice section, and then you have a reversed reading, and then you also have a warning, and then a quick answer. So if you're doing like a one card pull or something, the quick answer section seems to be a good sort of indicator, because it's usually like a yes or a no, or kind of like now is not the time kind of thing, right? So if you're someone who's kind of interested in learning like the yes no's of the cards, this might be a good resource for you. But other than that, not a whole lot of profound stuff in this guidebook. Pretty standard stuff. So there's that. Now, as far as the cards go, the card backs are really lovely. I'm sure, as you can see, they are not reversible because of the eye. The eye, you can pretty much tell which way it is. So, you know, that's one thing. There's also slightly different color variations on these flowers in the corners, but overall, it's pretty reversible. I'm not usually typically worried about that. The cardstock itself is really nice. It's pretty standard US Games cardstock. It's got a nice snap. You know, it's not too glossy, but it's also not it's not like super matte or papery. It has that kind of, I don't know, waxy feel is the best way to describe it. So the cardstock is pretty decent. In terms of the size of the cards, it is pretty dang close to standard tarot size. They're just ever so slightly wider. So this is kind of your standard tarot size here, and then you can see it's just a little bit wider. So nothing in terms of a huge departure from that. So let's do a quick flip through of the cards, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look at some of the things that I love, maybe some of the things that I don't love, and talk about why this has become such a sort of workhorse deck in my collection. So this is the Old Style Tarot by Alexander Ray. So that is the Old Style Tarot. It's really beautiful. I'm sure you've noticed by now the aesthetic of this deck is kind of very, I don't know, I would say like Victorian meets like engraving, kind of antique feel. I just love the art style of this deck. It's the thing that drew me to it way back when it was an indie deck. And I really love it. The color palette's very unified. The art is very cohesive. The titles are really well done. This is a deck that you can tell the creator took some serious time in making sure that all the aspects of the card were cohesive, right? Even the borders, right? You get these little, they're typically referred to as like bleed lines in printing, but they're a part of the card, and in some cards they're very apparent, and in other cards they're not, and you can see how things go outside of them and things like that. But it's the art style in this is one of my favorites. It's absolutely beautiful. Very classical, very kind of Renaissance reminiscent. There's obviously some nods to different artists and things like that in some of these cards. I'm sure you've also noticed that it does follow a pretty strict RWS format, but there are a lot of nods, like here in the Sun card and the Fool card, to the Marseille tradition. So in the ancient Italian tradition, you'll see kind of depictions of things in that vein as well. The one thing that I really love about this deck, right, like you see it here in the Two of Cups, is that there's a lot of kind of subtle symbolism and symbology put into the deck, right? So it's maybe not as apparent. So if you're newer to tarot, it's not kind of in your face, but as you kind of learn and grow and learn about, you know, different esoteric practices or symbolism or mythology and things like that, a lot of those things will start to pop out of the card. Even here, like just the subtle use of that spider's web in the Five of Cups is really poignant, right? In that kind of regard. and I love the Seven of Cups, right? With sort of the three fates, right? Kind of pouring water into the third eye of this sort of decapitated figure, and you have, you know, these other, you know, kind of elemental spirit kind of things whispering into the ears, and it's really interesting. It's really different, but still gives that same sort of message, that same sort of vibe to the cards, right? So yeah, I really love this deck. The courts are wonderful. They have character, which to me is really important when reading the court cards. You know, I've talked about this a lot in various different things, whether it's client readings or on live streams, which, if you don't know this, by the way, if you're watching this review, I do live streams pretty much every Sunday, so come hang out with us. We hang out on Sunday mornings, and we have a lot of fun. But you know, I've talked a number of times about how when I look at the court cards, I approach them as characters, like from books or films or things like that I can really relate to and connect with, right? And so having very caricatured court cards really helps me in reading them. And just even like the little subtle, like the subtlety of the Knight of Cups. You have these two cherubim kind of whispering to each other, right? And the Knight of Cups is kind of the knight that I've always kind of looked at as being the diplomat, right? So it's that idea of like sending someone to kind of whisper in someone's ear to get something done, right? So, or the, you know, the cup with the eye on it, right? Where the emotion is the source of knowledge, right? That kind of thing. There's just really subtle, really cool things in this deck that the more you use it, the more you kind of pick up on those esoteric nods and cues. So yeah, it's a really beautiful deck. I just love it. I love this almost like godlike figure in the Eight of Wands. I thought that was such a clever addition to that card. It's just, the artwork is beautiful. This is, and it's a deck that is easily approachable, but is different, right? Which I also kind of like. That Three of Swords is really gorgeous as well. It's interesting because, you know, we have, as readers and as people who are having their cards read, there is a certain amount of expectation. I love the inclusion, by the way, of the thespian masks and the fox on the Seven of Swords. A very different take to how I know, because, you know, I've talked about this a few times too, is like the Seven of Swords, I will talk about it as escape a lot of times, but this, you very much get the trickster energy in this one, which I kind of dig, right? So it kind of forces me to look at things differently. I love this Eight of Swords, because you get like this image of like your own ghost being the cause of your fears and anxieties, right? Like, I really kind of love that reflection, because you can see they're wearing the same clothes, so it is intended to be the bound figure who is like the sort of like executioner here in this card, right? And the inclusion of the crow and things like that. It's just really, it's really layered and it's really nuanced, and you know, even just the fact that his feet are bloodied and sore, right? Like, there's just, the more you kind of spend time with these cards, the more you really start to pick apart some really cool, deep, meaningful symbolism in them, which I really love. So yeah, I can't I can't speak to anything really bad about this deck. I mean, I would love to have this on like a really papery cardstock. That would be my favorite thing in the world, in terms of like papery feel, not thickness, just to be clear in that, right? I love cardstock that doesn't have this kind of waxy feel, but it feels more paper like. But I don't have a lot of complaints in this deck. I love how in the Suit of Pentacles, a lot of the coins have different esoteric symbols on them, and you'll see them change from card to card, right? Or they'll have different themes from card to card, which I think is really clever. You have like secret society type symbols here, and it's really well done. Planetary Very well done. Each of the court members have like their own kind of coin too. So yeah, it's full of little hidden gems and nuggets. And then a cool thing too is you get this blank card, right? And I remember, so you know, all tarot decks these days, typically you get like a little you get extra cards, right? You usually get a title card and then you get some sort of like extra card, and that's just a product of the nature of how decks are created these days, right? Because they're printed on these big large sheets, which are typically comprised of a certain number of cards. And so effectively, to keep the number even, right? Let's say there's 10 cards per sheet. If it's a 78 card deck, then you have a sheet that has room for 2 extra cards. So sometimes you get like a little bonus art card, like you do with the newest release of the Thoth Tarot. Sometimes you'll get like the fun little like squirrel card or whatever, right? Or you'll get that like extra card in the major arcana and stuff like that. And this deck, you get the blank card. And there is actually a page in the guidebook, which I thought was great. I love when you get these cards and then they actually do give them meaning, right? So the blank card is an addition to the standard deck. When it comes up in a tarot spread, it generally indicates that the reading cannot provide the information sought by the querent. Possible reasons for this include the querent is not ready to hear the truth or make a choice, the timing is not right for the reading, all the information the querent needs is on the cards before the blank card, which I think is really cool. And the cards that follow will only be confusing, or the current situation is ambiguous, right? And so I actually do leave this in when I do readings with it. And if it comes up, I'll oftentimes pull the guidebook out and show people like, this is what it means and this is how we're going to read it, right? Now, there are instances where I will pull this out depending on who I'm reading for. But specifically, if I do a reading for myself, I will leave this in. But it's a really beautiful deck. This has easily become one of my top 10 decks in the past year, and will probably stay up there. As you can see, it shuffles really well, and it looks great in a spread, right? It just looks really, really wonderful when you lay it out on the table. I just don't have really any complaints about this deck. So, I mean, look at how beautiful that is. So, I love reading with it. No complaints. It has quickly become a go-to deck in my practice, and I would highly encourage you to check this one out, because I think it's going to be a deck that I continue to sort of learn from. Because there have been a few instances where I've kind of looked up different symbols, or even Google Lensed a couple of things on the cards that I wasn't super familiar with, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. That is one thing I will say about the guidebook. I wish the guidebook did a better job of talking about the symbolism in the cards. So if you're going to give us this kind of larger format guidebook, which is great, as I get older, I am loving bigger print. It's way easier to read, but it would have been nice to have had more information about kind of the symbolic things that the creator included in the cards and why they're there or what they mean, and things like that. But overall, this deck, hands down, easily in my top 10 decks now. And it's a deck that I know I'll continue to love for years and years to come. So if you haven't checked this one out already, go check it out. There is a link to where you can pick one up down in the description box down below. Let me know what you think about this deck in the comments section. I would love to hear what your thoughts are. And I really appreciate you guys coming to hang out with me and check out another tarot deck. As always, you guys, remember, everyone is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. So be kind to one another out there, okay? We'll see you guys back around YouTube. Bye, everybody.